President Biden is back at the White House this morning after he took a swing through so-called Trump country yesterday, as Jimmy just said. The president attended campaign events and fundraisers in South Florida. He first landed at Palm Beach International Airport, the same airport where former President Trump keeps his private plane. In fact, Air Force One and the Trump plane were just a few hundred yards apart from each other on that tarmac. Biden then drove his motorcade down a highway that was surrounded by Trump fans jeering it. The president then attended a private campaign reception in Jupiter, where he told donors he thinks he can win Florida. Later, the campaign hauled in more than $6 million at a fundraiser in Miami. So, a productive day. Joining us now, politics reporter for Semaphore, Shelby Talcott. Shelby, good to see you this morning. I mean, the imagery was amusing. Biden going to Trump's backyard to raise some money and directly going after Trump again, using his name over and over and over to attack him and to draw these contrasts. Tell us about that new strategy and also whether Democrats actually think they can put Florida in play, that state that's really trended red the last couple elections.
On the second question, I think Democrats will acknowledge that it's an uphill climb. At the same time, when you have these states and an election that right now seems to be so close, it's worth going to and talking to voters, and you just never know. But at the end of the day, it is an uphill climb. On the first question, it's been really interesting because over the past several years, Biden has really made a concerted effort not to use Trump's name, and he would go after him, but in more indirect ways. That has changed, and I think part of the thinking from the Biden team is that the calculus has changed. So much has happened since the 2020 election that voters now need to hear directly from Biden why Donald Trump should not be president. So that's why you're hearing him name Donald Trump a lot more heading into this, what's likely to be this general election between Trump and Biden. And
certainly some Biden advisors feel like Americans sort of forgot about Donald Trump. He just became background noise, and it's their job to put him front and center again, which they think will repel them. Let's talk about the map for a second more. Florida, I think strategists I speak to agree, a long shot, but maybe the Democrats play there. They make the Republicans spend money there. That's not bad. North Carolina, though, seems like the one state they think they can flip.
Yeah, and it's one of these situations where there are so many states that are right now looking really close. And why not? Why shouldn't the Biden campaign start trying to play, especially because, as you just said, they want to remind voters who Donald Trump is and why, in their argument, voters should not vote for Donald Trump. And to do that, you have to go to these states that are looking maybe a little bit less blue right now and try to win over voters. There's still a long time left. And as Biden hits the campaign trail, remember, Donald Trump is going to be tied up with all of these legal issues. And so the Biden campaign is betting that that's also going to help them as they try to go to some of these states like North Carolina and win over voters.
So you mentioned Trump's ongoing legal issues. I know you wrote this week about the Jean Carroll ruling and the $83.3 million he's been ordered to pay. Talk to us how strategists you speak to view this as a campaign issue. How could it help or hurt both men, Trump and Biden?
One of the big questions from Democrats since this case has, Trump has been ordered to pay over $83 million to E. Jean Carroll is why isn't Biden directly using this? And the answer I've heard is A, because he doesn't really need to. What's important for Joe Biden is to focus on the issues that voters are concerned about, focus on the economy, focus on abortion. And the split screen between a current president who is out campaigning and focusing on issues of the future versus a former president who is sitting in a courtroom is going to sort of take care of itself. I also think there is the argument, probably more quietly from Biden's campaign, that focusing directly on these issues will open up a whole can of worms. Republicans already believe that these indictments are politically motivated, and it will just sort of distract from the argument at hand, which is what is going to benefit voters in 2024 and beyond.
And very briefly, Nikki Haley going after him, though, on this.
Yeah, this is really interesting because she's doing something that really we only have seen Chris Christie do, right? And so she has sort of taken the calculus of she's, going big or going home at this point. And it's going to be really interesting to see if that strategy works. But certainly the Trump campaign has declared her, dead to Republican voters. So we will see.
All right. Politics reporter for Semaphore, Shelby Talcott. Thank you for joining us here on set. We really appreciate it.